Today on the Playbook Podcast, Donald Trump will be talking God at the Museum of the Bible, and we'll be talking about Chicago and where else he might be going next. And we've got the inside scoop on a massive row between the Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and another key member of the administration. You want to stay tuned for that. Hello, I'm Jack Blanchard.
And I'm Dasha Burns. It is Monday, September 8th.
And this is the Playbook Podcast. And Dasha, we are back together again. It is great to see you, man.
Reunited, and it feels so good. I've missed you, my friend.
Is it hard being back at work, or are you buzzing already to be back in the political limelight?
Well, listen, getting back from vacation, I was in Dublin and then Mallorca with some old friends. It's a little rough to dive back into these colder, darker waters here in Washington, D.C. A little Monday blues, but nothing like a dose of politics to get you back at it.
I'm sure you're not the only person this morning feeling like that. Everyone has a busy Monday morning to look forward to, not least the President of the United States. He's got an early Monday morning speech. He's heading to the Museum of the Bible in the center of DC to make a 10 a.m. speech on religious liberty, which is an interesting topic for him to get into. I have to say, Dasha, just for sort of context for this, he signed an executive order back in May setting up something called the Religious Liberty Commission, which was a bunch of people to look into what he says is a big issue in America, which is people being denied their religious freedom. And I think when we say people, he's really talking about Christians, right?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. And it's really interesting to sort of track the relationship between Trump and religious voters, religious Americans, particularly evangelicals and Christians, because you'll remember in his first administration, he brought on Mike Pence to give him some street cred in that world. And then he became, over the course of the last 10 years or so, an almost Christ-like figure in those communities, even though he himself very rarely talks about religion. As I was thinking about this event this morning, I remembered a moment on the campaign trail that struck me, where it was an event with some religious Republicans. Pastor Paula White, who's now his spiritual advisor, was interviewing him, and she kept asking him these questions about his relationship to God and to the church, and kind of how does he pray and how does he see that relationship. And he talked a lot about the beautiful churches that he's been to. He talked about it from like the sort of real estate perspective, but didn't really get into at all his own spirituality. The only time I've really heard him talk about it is in the aftermath of Butler, Pennsylvania, and that assassination attempt. That's the only time that he has seemed comfortable going there. But otherwise, he really doesn't have a lot of ease when he talks about his own religion.
No, it doesn't seem to come naturally to him. He's not as fluent as he is when he's talking about some of his more favorite topics, and certainly not as fluent as some past presidents I've heard talk about religion have been, as you say, with that one exception. And it seemed like a bit of a religious epiphany almost what happened to him in Butler, the way he was talking about that in the aftermath. And people who know the president well do say it changed him, changed his character, made him even more determined that he's right about everything, essentially. At the event today, we're not only going to hear from him, there's a commission hearing where we're going to hear from parents and students talking about their experience of expressing their faith in American public schools.
Yeah, and of course you can expect the First Amendment argument from the president and from this administration, which does land with some irony for folks on the other side of the aisle who are arguing that the president is infringing on First Amendment rights of protesters of universities in the way that he has handled some of the opposition to him across the country.
Yeah, not least the press sometimes. The case they still bring up is Joe Kennedy, who was a football coach who got fired for praying on the field. That's about 10 years ago now, and it went all the way to the Supreme Court. But people still bring that case up. It really caught people's imagination as an example of someone who was, as they would see it, persecuted by the state or agencies related to the state for being a Christian and in a very overt way.
Yeah, and this is, of course, part of President Trump's attempt to follow through on some of his promises to his more religious voters. The first administration, it was all about overturning Roe, and that was the big reason why so many Christians did line up behind him, the anti-abortion rights movement. And now he needs to find some of these other issues to keep those communities behind him.
There will be plenty else for the press to ask Donald Trump about, assuming he puts himself in front of a camera or two after his speech, not least this issue of whether or not we're going to see some sort of incursion into Chicago. Last night, as he was arriving back in DC, he said we could solve Chicago very quickly, but we're going to make a decision on where we go in the next day or two. So essentially today or tomorrow.
Maybe.
Maybe, exactly. And he said this a
we
lot.
We know the Trump timelines are questionable.
He started dipping his toe into other possible cities, but he clearly wants to get on and do this. He feels like the DC experiment has been very successful on his own terms, although I'm sure not everyone would agree with that. He certainly thinks it has. It's cut crime. It's made him look tough. Obviously, Chicago is a very different case. Then you'll have seen the meme he posted on Truth Social over the weekend, Dasha.
Yeah.
The Vietnam War thing, this sort of mocked up Apocalypse Now post, it did not go down well at all in Chicago and has really caused a big stir that.
Yeah, it didn't go over well with a lot of folks. There was a lot of uproar over that. And you saw protests over the weekend as well in DC and in Chicago. That is the kind of message from the president that despite how much his social media feed tends to be incendiary, this one really, really did cut through. And that's part of his tactic with these sort of things, right? It is to create that provocation. And then they can say, which his spokespeople did, why are you more upset about a meme that the president posted than the crime that's going on in these cities? These are the talking points that they are very comfortable with and they believe put Democrats on their back foot. And it's also no coincidence that he's looking and talking a lot about J.B. Pritzker, the governor of Illinois, who might be running for president. Same with what he's been doing in his battle with Gavin Newsom in California. So this is strategic politically as well from the president, even if polling on how people feel about the National Guard in their cities might not be so good for him at the moment.
You bet. And it also stands to reason that if you do flood a city centre with federal police, National Guard and so on, crime probably will go down for that short period that you do that. There might not be that many crime experts that tell you that's a great long-term solution, that it's going to stay down. But you would think for that period, as we have seen in DC, that crime will go down. And that will allow the president to say afterwards, look, it was a success. It'll have some numbers and statistics that he will throw out there.
And Trump loves a quick win. He said it last night. He said it multiple times. In 12 days, we almost 100% got rid of crime. There's still crime in DC, but he loves that ability to say, look, as soon as I got involved, we were able to fix this thing.
Completely. And if they all pull out again and then crime goes up again, well, he doesn't need to get into that, does he? He's got a stat that he can rely on and he can say that they oppose this. Look at them. They're not tough on crime and look how effective I can be.
Right. And we'll see what actually happens because he has been putting this out there a lot, but he hasn't committed and he's been sort of wavering. Oh, we're going to go in. Oh, no, we're not going to go in unless Pritzker asks me to. They should want us there. So we'll see. Perhaps in the next day or two, or in the next 2 weeks, or on some timeline of the president's choosing what he decides to do here.
Let's talk about this amazing scoop that has gone up on the Politico website in the last couple of hours.
Oh, man, our colleague Rachel Bade, my goodness, what a story.
Rachel Bade, formerly of the Playbook Parish, now our chief over on Capitol Hill, has got the most extraordinary story today about a dinner that happened just this past Wednesday night last week with some of the most senior people in Trump world, the president's cabinet and their close allies, all at a very fancy club in DC.
This is the club that Don Jr. and Omid Malik and some Trump world insiders decided to start to make it an exclusive place for the ultra rich. The cost of membership is like $500,000. It is very fancy and supposed to be very classy, but some not so classy things transpired here.
Indeed they did. They said, according to Rachel's story, 30 or so guests sat in this big long table for this big celebration, including Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins, and others, including the Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. I find this so amazing, Dasha, because every time I've seen Scott Bessent, he's like the most mild-mannered, quiet-voiced, geeky finance guy. He's like a stereotype.
He has the reputation of being like the moderating, calming, grounding force in this administration.
Totally. He bumps into, at this party, the top housing finance official in the administration, Bill Pulte. This is the guy who's been pulling out all these bits of information about alleged mortgage fraud that Donald Trump has been using to throw at some of his enemies, including Lisa Cook of the Federal Reserve. So Bill Pulte has got relatively what would normally be quite a low-key job, but he sort of propelled himself into the upper echelons of media coverage, right? So he's quite now a known figure in DC. Scott Besson walks in and essentially calls him out in the most... I mean, I can't even repeat what he said to him according to this story because this is a family podcast, Dasha. But why the are you talking to the president about me? You threatening to punch him in the face. This is the Treasury Secretary of the United States.
You can read this unbleeped in Rachel's column.
Exactly. Apparently, Scott Besson felt that Bill Pulte had been bad-mouthing him to the President of the United States, and he took extreme exception to that, and in the most aggressive, threatening way, essentially tried to start a fight in the middle of this very, very exclusive nightclub.
Yeah, he basically said, we can take this outside and I'll kick your ass. Like, I mean, in even more explicit terms than that.
These are two of the most senior officials in the country in a very, very exclusive public place. And it nearly turned into an actual fist fight by the sounds of it.
What's even more remarkable is that this is Scott Besson's second time getting into a physical altercation with another.
Remind us who we had in a headlock last time.
Do we remember the former bromance of Trump and Elon Musk? Well,
Elon Musk.
It was Elon Musk outside. It's funny. The club is called Executive Branch. The Musk fight was outside of the Oval Office.
Right, and that really did get physical, right? This was shortly before Elon Musk was eased out the door. Right, and there were headlocks and stuff like this. This latest one on Wednesday night didn't quite get that far, but it was close. I mean, according to Rachel's story, Scott Besson is offering him outside, swearing in his face, and then someone gets between him and calm him down, and then they have to go and sit at opposite ends of this massive table because they can't be trusted to be near each other because who knows what's going to happen.
To be a fly on the wall, I just can't imagine those words coming out of Scott Besson's mouth. Like there's this Jekyll and Hyde situation here. I mean, it is a remarkable story.
Did things like this happen during the Eisenhower administration or the Kennedy or the Obama or the George W. Bush? Or is this, do you think, a very Trumpian situation we're hearing described here by Rachel?
You know, it's a good question. I do feel like perhaps in Scott Besson's defense, when the entire global economic order is resting on your shoulders, maybe you got some tension that you
think he's a bit
need
stressed
to release.
Yeah, well, it's fair enough. It's stressful
Maybe
stuff,
we got to get
guess.
him a membership at a boxing club or something.
Yeah, or just some sort of thing where he can just chill the hell out and just learn to calm down a little bit.
That's right. That's right.
No one related to this story has commented on the record, I should say, but Rachel does have plenty of sources who have spoken off the record about what's happened. So let's see how that one plays out today. Dasha, before we go, let's talk about your favorite subjects in the world. Tennis, because tennis got political yesterday, Sunday.
And delayed.
Tell us what happened.
So President Trump went to the U.S. Open. I believe he's the first sitting president that has attended the U.S. Open. Former presidents have gone. And we've had some great reporting from the White House team about these intimate ties between the presidency and sports in this administration. So he goes to the U.S. Open with a number of folks from the administration. The match is delayed, I think, like 30 or 45 minutes because of all the security and all this hubbub. And yeah, he gets a few different moments on camera. And according to the pool notes, there were both boos and cheers. Although I'll tell you, it was very hard to hear watching at home. Of course, I was watching what the actual crowd reaction was, but it was quite the moment. Yannick Sinner did say in his Yannick Sinner Law, Sports Center, but Carlos won.
It's just Carlos, right? It's just first name terms.
Carlitos. I mean, they are two incredible players. And Yannick Sinner did say, some very important people are here. Neither of the players named Trump, but did acknowledge the presence of
maybe they were talking about Steve Witkoff and Susie Wiles. Who knows?
But it is amazing how much we have seen him show up, whether it's F1 or the U.S. Open.
He did the Super Bowl. He does UFC. And he's going to something else this Thursday. Does he actually love sports or does he just love being seen at the sports?
He's had a bunch of athletes to the White House as well. I mean, some of it's been traditional, some one-offs.
I think he enjoys being seen there. I always remember, did you see the soccer Club World Cup thing where he got right on the pitch and grabbed the trophy and really started trying to get involved over the summer? He seemed to enjoy being in the limelight and right in the middle of it all.
Yeah. There's an affinity there. It's fascinating to watch.
All right. If you spot Donald Trump or anyone else around town, do send us your spottings, your tips, your birthdays to playbook@politico.com. Dasha, thank you so much for being here. It's so great we've got you back. That's all we've got time for on today's show. We've got much more news and analysis in today's Playbook newsletter, which you can find at politico.com/playbook. And we'll be back tomorrow. Have a great day.
Thanks for listening.